This week is Parshas Vayera, and we're going to pick a topic that's a little bit not discussed as much, although there's so many amazing things about Abraham and his chesed that we spoke about last year, and the Akedah, and all kinds of amazing things about Abraham. And, we don't like to repeat what we say from year to year. So late last night and early this morning, we were able to provide a new shiur. And we're going to discuss today a very enigmatic figure, and that is Avimelech. Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim, the king of the Philistines. And I got a list here of about 14 questions that we're going to ask, and that will all get answered with one point. Now, we know that there's been a few not nice guys in the Torah, been mentioned already, even in relationship with Avram. And really each one needs its own discussion. We start last week's Parsha when there was a hunger in the land. Avram went down to Mitzrayim, and we're introduced to Paro. But by Paro, there isn't a lot going on over there. It just says that when Sarah came down, Paro found out she was good looking, and Paro takes her into the palace, and he makes Avram rich, and then Hashem punishes Paro, and Paro calls Avram and says, "What did you do? Why didn't you tell me this? Listen, take your wife and leave." And that's it. There's not a lot of discussion about Paro, and he doesn't really come back to our discussions till next Sefer Shmos, where we learn a lot about Paro. But on the other hand, Avimelech, him, we have a lot of play with him. In this week's Parsha, there's a lot going on with Avram and Avimelech, and there's a lot of development of the character of Avimelech, when he, again, a second time, Avram has to go through the ordeal of his wife Sarah being taken by a foreign king, abducted. And then we'll see in next week's, in 2 weeks' Parshas, Toldos, once again, Avimelech takes the wife of Yitzchak, takes Rivka. And there's a lot of talk about him as well. So the first question we need to analyze is, why is there so much detail about Avimelech and not Paro? That's the overall first question. But now let's look into more detail, looking in the Chumash at two events in this Parsha and in Parshas Toldos, and to look at a number of troubling things. So we're on Perek Chav, Pasuk Aleph, page 90 in the Art Scroll Siddur. We'll just read a few psukim and just learn together some Chumash. Okay, page 90 in the Art Scroll Chumash, 90, 91. Okay, this is after the story of, this is after Yitzchak is born, after Yishmael and Hagar are thrown out of the house. Let's check that. That's before. This is after the destruction of Sodom, rather. Okay, after the destruction of Sodom. So now that Sodom is destroyed, Avram cannot stay in Hebron because there's no travelers passing by Avram. So he has to move now to the land of Dror. Vayisa misham Avram arza hanegev, and Avram traveled to the south. Vayeshev ben Kadesh ben Shur, he lived between Kadesh ben Shur. Vayogar beGror, he lived in a city called Geror. Vayomer Avram el Sarah ishto, and Avram said about Sarah his wife, Achosi, she is my sister. Vayishlach Avimelech melech Geror vayikach Sarah, and Avimelech sent forth for Sarah, and took Sarah against her will. Now, the excitement begins. Pasuk Gimel. Vayavo Elokim el Avimelech b'chalom halayla, and Hashem comes to Avimelech in the dream of the night. Vayomer lo, and he says to him, Hin chameis, you're going to die. Ala isha shelakachta, for this woman that you took, v'hi b'ulas baal, she is a married woman. Whoa. How is this compared to what Paro did in last week's Parsha? Does Hashem come to Paro and say, you're going to die? He doesn't say that. He gives him a plague. He gives him a plague. He doesn't tell him, you're going to die. He's troubling him, and he's giving him a lot of pain. But why such a strong response? What did Avimelech do that was so different, that deserves such a strong response that Hashem says, I want to kill you? Question 1. What's more interesting is Avimelech's answer. Now what's interesting, even before he answers, Pasuk Dalet says, Vavimelech lo karav eleho. Avimelech, we're on page 92 and 93, Avimelech did not get close to her. And Rashi says, because a malach did not let him. Hashem didn't let her. And why? Because they were punished. Hashem closed up all of his openings to his body. And not only to him, to other people in the palace too. So you can't violate a woman if all your openings are closed. So the pasuk just parenthetically throws that in there. And then Vayomer, he says to Hashem, Adonai, Hagoi, Gam Tzadik Tarog. God, a righteous, a nation, even a righteous one, are you going to kill? You're going to slay a nation even though it's proper, it's good? So if you look in the last source on the sheet, I'm sure we're starting backwards, it says like this, O my Lord, you will slay a nation even though it is righteous. You figure, okay, he's saying, okay, what do you want, Hashem? I didn't do anything. Says Rashi, will you kill him even if he is righteous? Maybe this is your way, to destroy nations for no reason? Such is what you did to the generation of the flood and of the generation of dispersal. So I say that you killed them for no reason, just like you were going to kill me. This is an amazing chutzpah. It's an unbelievable chutzpah to Hashem. Hashem says he's going to kill you. Now you got to remember, how often does Hashem come to a person, to a Russia in a dream? You know, if God came to you in a dream and said, I'm going to kill you because you did something bad, I mean, this is the Almighty speaking. This isn't a Secretary of State telling you what to do. It's the Almighty, and he knew it was the Almighty. And the Almighty knows what goes on, right? So Hashem says, I'm going to kill you because you took this woman. What should have been his response? I'm sorry. Rather, he takes a very opposing position. And he says, God, you're just not a fair person at all. You just kill all the innocent people around. Which is quite a shocking response, which we totally wouldn't expect. I mean, what are you trying to pull the wool over God's eyes? And he says to Pasuk, okay, Halohu Amarli, he said to me, Achosi, she's my sister. Vigami Amrochi, and she also said, it's my brother. Bitam Lavavi, with a wholesome heart, Vinikoin Kapayos, he says, with clean hands I did all this. So he's trying to excuse himself away. Now you might say, well, maybe he thought that's who she was. Right? So now the question is, well, if he thought she was his sister, so why does God want to kill him? Right? So what's going on? Like, did he know the truth? Did he not know the truth? If he knew the truth, then say you're sinful. If he didn't know the truth, then what does God want from him? So Pasuk Zion, Vayomer Lav Elokim, Hashem says to him, Bachalom, in the dream, Gam Anochi yadati ki b'sam levav chasisa zos. I also know you did this with a wholesome heart. You know. So then if you know he did it with a wholesome heart, why do you want to kill him? And I held you back from sinning against me. And how did he hold him back? By closing up all his holes. Okay? And so he couldn't come to her. So that's why I made sure that wouldn't happen. Now you got to figure also, if Avimelech, you know, right after he takes Sarah, all of a sudden he notices that all his openings have closed up. Shouldn't he think that maybe he's done something wrong? You know, you just took this woman, right? And, you know, maybe you don't have any suspicions at all, and you see something unusual is happening to you. It wasn't just like, a viral infection, you know. You know, it was like really miraculous punishment. And then God comes and says to give her back. I mean, you know, like, okay, I give up. No, he's sticking his guns. But look what Hashem then says after, well, I know you didn't mean any trouble. Right? Pasuk sign. V'atah. Now, Hashevesh Zish Kinoviu. Return this woman because he is a prophet. He'll die for you. He'll daven for you and you'll live. If you don't, die. I told you you're going to die. You and everything is you. So why does Hashem have to tell him again he's going to die? He already told him he's going to die. And now he's adding. Now that you're going to die, everybody else is going to die. So it's all a very strange scenario. Okay, so now, that's a very strange encounter. The whole encounter is very strange. Let's continue. Then, Vayashkem Avimelech baboker. Avimelech gets up in the morning. Vayikra l'chol avadov. He calls all his servants. Vayidaber called his name. He tells over the whole story of God's name in their ears. Vayira anashim odem, and the men are all very much afraid. So, so now, he had the dream, right? What did he do after the dream? Like, the end of Pasuk Zayin and Pasuk Ches, there's like something missing. There's something missing. Hashem tells him, you're going to die. Then it says he got up early in the morning. What does that suggest happened? Or didn't happen? He just went back to sleep. I don't know about you, but if all my openings have been closed, okay, and God comes to me in a dream and says, I'm going to kill you, okay, what would you do if God did that to you? What would you do?
You can't sleep.
You couldn't sleep. Is that it? You'd call the advisors in the middle of the night. You're the king, for goodness sake. It's not like you're just anybody. You're the king. The king does whatever he wants when he pleases. It's a national emergency. Right? And then who should he be calling in right after that? What? Dr. Saul. Avram. Now, this is so different than with Paro. In Paro, last week's Parsha, Perek Yud Gimel, what happens when Paro gets it? Hashem plagued Paro. The very next pasuk. See, also, Avimelech gets plagued. He didn't do anything. He's waiting. Then Hashem finally comes to him in a dream. He's got his kicks all sweet all the time. Paro, as soon as he's plagued, Paro calls Avram in. What did you do? What's going on over here? He's not crouching around. He gets right to the point. Avimelech seems to have all the time in the world. He can't go to the bathroom. He can't do anything. He's not rushing. God comes to him in a dream. He's still not rushing. He talks to his advisors. Very, very strange. See, it's so much here, but since everybody talks about the first part of the parsha, the end of the parsha, the middle gets lost. So now let's continue. Where are we up to now? So he speaks to them. So finally, Pasuk Tes. Now finally, Vayikra Avimelech l'Avram. Avimelech calls Avram, and he says, what have you done to us? And what sin did I do to you that you bring upon me this great sin? Things that people shouldn't do. And he continues in Pasuk Yud, what did you see? What prompted you to do this? Finally, Avram answers in Pasuk Yud Aleph, Ki amarti rak ein yiras Elokim b'makom hazeh. I saw, but there was not fear of God in this place. Varoguni al dvar ishti, and you would kill me because of my wife. So he's saying, well, I didn't feel you were a God-fearing person. So that's very interesting. The Gemara in Maseches Makos, which is the fifth source that we're going to look at shortly, has a question. When God spoke to Moshe before, and Hashem said in Pasuk Vav, Pasuk Zayin, he says, where is that? 1 second. Where is it? Just hand it. Pasuk Zayin. It says, return this woman, kinovihu, because he's a prophet. What do you say? Because he's a prophet. What does that have to do with anything? Why are you saying because he's a prophet if he wasn't a prophet? Right? So the Gemara over here says, in Makis, and you'll get to the quote in a minute. He says, but the wife of someone who's not a prophet would not need to be returned? And if he wasn't a prophet, you wouldn't return it? Right. So the rabbis say that this is what God said to Avimelech. He said, but now return the man's wife in any case. And you said, but what do you want? He told me he was my sister. What do you want from me? That was your complaint? To that, God says, Navi, he's a prophet. He had insight, meaning he was a clever man. And he learned from your question that who is this woman? Is she your sister? He knew that he was in trouble. Why? And now it's the quote where we have inside what I've got you in that source. He said, when a guest arrives in a city, proper people ask him about matters of food and drink, like, do you need a place to stay? Where are you staying? Imagine a new person comes to town, to Thornhill, comes to Shul on Shabbos. You say, oh, if you settled in properly, do you have food? Can we invite you for lunch? That's what a proper host would do. Right? But do they start by asking him, is this your wife or is she your sister? The first thing you start looking at, is it the pretty woman? And start asking questions about the women? Is that the first thing you ask? So by that question, he understood their intentions weren't that good, and his life could be in danger. As we know, the rules in the Canaanite world at that time was, of course, you cannot violate a married woman. God forbid. That's a terrible sin. But if you kill the husband and have Rahmanis on his widow, that's a nice thing to do. So we see from here that, okay, that's what we need to know. So now the problem is, so what is it? What is the reason why Avram did what he did? The Gemara Makkah seems to say is because he was asking about the wife. He wasn't didn't have proper derech eretz. Didn't have derech eretz. And Avram's saying, no, you're not God-fearing. So what is it? Is it derech eretz? Is it God-fearing? Which one is it? So we have to resolve that. We have to resolve that. Okay. Now, what other question do we have on this topic over here? So let's continue. So fine. So Avram says this, Avram says a few more things. Then we go to the next page, 94, 95. So what does Avimelech do now? He takes sheep and cattle, avodim and servants, shvachas and maidservants. He gives them to Avram. He gives them a big gift. And he returns Sarah. And then in Pasuk Tesvav, Avimelech says, my land is before you. Wherever you want to live, you can live. Do whatever you want. You want to live here, you can live fine. And then to Sarah, he gives her a whole bunch of money, and she gives her all kinds of nice things. And that's basically how, and then Avram prays for them, and they are healed. Fine. So, what was Paro's response to Avram when he found out that Sarah was Avram's wife and not Avram's sister? What was his response? End of Perek Base. Paro just says right away, what were you doing? Why did you lie to me? Right? And you didn't tell me this? And then he says, and now take your wife and get out of here. Finish. Big different responses. Big different responses. So on a simple level, you could say, on a very simple level, Paro just said, get out of here. But Avimelech, well, even that answer is not a good answer. Avimelech was smitten with a sickness, and he needed Avram to pray for him, so he had to be nice to him. Okay, but Paro also was plagued. Didn't seem to care about Avram being nice to him either. We don't even mention the idea of Avram praying for him. It's another story. But anyway, the whole story is very difficult to understand. Okay, now, fast forward 2 weeks from now. We're going to get all of Avimelech in 1 week. 2 weeks from now, there's a hunger in the land of Yisrael, goes down to Gror again. This is many, many years later. It's a debate if it's the same Avimelech or it's the same kingdom of Avimelech. I'm not going to get into that, but let's say it's the same one to make it simple. So, what happens over there? It's a big hunger in the land. Yitzchak moves into that area. Yitzchak has a little piece of land. He starts harvesting, growing, and he gets 100 times the normal amount of grain. He becomes very wealthy, very rich. And what is Avimelech's reaction? And also, he also did take, before that happened, he was thinking of taking Rivka, right? But he didn't because Yitzchak lied, but then he found out what the truth was. Fine, he let him stay. But then when Yitzchak gets very rich, he throws him out. He says, Lech mi tanu, ki itzamtem men, you're too powerful for us. He just throws him out. So why is he throwing him out? Number one. Also, we'll find out later in this week's parsha, later on, Avimelech catches up with Avram and wants to make a covenant with Avram. And then Avram starts giving Avimelech certain rebukes for certain indiscretions that his shepherds were doing. But when Avimelech in the next 2 weeks' parsha comes and meets up with Yitzchak, Yitzchak does not give him any rebuke for things that he did was bad. Why is it different behavior Yitzchak than Avram? Also, we find Avram makes a covenant with Avimelech, and the rabbis criticize Avram for making a covenant with Avimelech. And in 2 weeks' parsha, Yitzchak reinforces that covenant, and he is not criticized by the rabbis. So those are questions that need to be analyzed. And finally, the Torah says about the Plishtim, when Yitzchak got very wealthy, it says, Vayikanu oso, they were jealous oso, and it's instead of the normal Hebrew, which would be Vayikanu bo, they were jealous of him, which would be a stronger word. Oso is a weaker way of saying it. Why is that happening? And another thing we find out, that when they want to make Yitzchak's wells inoperable, not only do they close the wells, but they fill them up with sand, which is a very, very big job. So why are they doing that as well? So there's a lot of questions throughout Avimelech's life, a very, very strange personality. And this is what we have to analyze. So the reason you're wondering, why do we have to bother to learn about Avimelech's personality? So we've said this many times before, that every personality in the Torah talks about, the Hasidic Sfarim say, means every human being has that potential of that personality within themselves. The reason why the Torah is telling us so much about Avimelech is because every Jew has a little bit of Avimelech inside of himself. Right? So therefore, that's something we need to learn how to deal with that type of personality. In Shmos, we'll learn about Paro. There's a little bit of a Paro inside of us. All these personalities, we're learning about Lavan, all these personalities we have to know, and it's not just theoretical, but those are things that, as we'll unfold this morning, you'll see there could be a number of things that are very applicable for us. So what we're going to discuss is basically a shmuz from Shalom Shvadron, who was a great Maggid who passed away not too long ago, and he was a student or a contemporary of Rabbi Leib Chasman, who was a great rabbi in Israel. And between the two of them, we're going to give you the answer that will answer all these questions on the parsha. So the first thing that we're told is that the Torah only talks about big people and not small, petty people. If the Torah talks a lot about somebody, that means the person has a big character and is a great person, and that's something that should be acknowledged. Your average run-of-the-mill Russia, the Torah doesn't have to talk too much about Russia. There's not a lot of petty people take up petty space. Big people take up a lot of space. So number one, if Avimelech, there's a lot of space given to Avimelech, means he is a personality worth analyzing and is of a great stature. Now we're going to look at some very interesting statements of the rabbis which need to be balanced here. All right, where are we up to here? Look in source number 3. I've skipped some because some are more obvious. Sources 1 and 2 just show the difference that Paro was afflicted, and source 2, Avimelech said, you're going to die. Okay, source number 3, the Ramban says over here, I'll read you the whole source from the original. You got the one line there. He says, Avram said that she is my sister. So Ramban says, this is not like in Egypt, even though he said she was a sister in Egypt too. It's not the same. Because there, when he went to Mitzrayim, the Egyptians saw she was beautiful, and right away, they praised her beauty to the officers, to the king, because they were licentious people. The people of Egypt were very licentious. They were low moral people. And therefore the Torah doesn't have a lot to talk about them. Because we know you just stay away from immorality. Simple. This king, Tom v'Yoshor, was wholesome and straight. He was a nice guy. Gam anoshav tovim. And also his people were nice people. They were nice, civilized people. That's what Ramban says. Rak Avram chashid asam, but Avram was suspicious of them. He said to her, she's my sister. In other words, Ramban is saying, going down to Egypt, he knew what he was getting into before he started. He came down there. It's interesting that before he comes to Egypt, he pulls Sarah aside and says, listen, I know what we're getting into. You better say you're my sister, because we're gonna have major problems with these people. Why? Because Avram knew they were licentious, immoral people, and he knew from the get-go he's heading for trouble. When he went down here, in this story here, he doesn't talk to Sarah at all, but right away, he just says, she's my sister. Which is interesting, but Ramban is saying he was a good guy. He was a good guy. And you figure that's just the Ramban's opinion. Let's see what the Rambam has to say. The Rambam in his Sefer Mor Nevuchim writes, he says, and we have no doubt that Lavan was a complete Rasha. And Avimelech Hoya Ish Tam Bamo was a Ish Tov Bamo was a good man in his nation. And even Hashem used those same words. Keep it tam levav chasizos. You did this with awesomeness. So here is the issue, and this is what Rabbi Leib Passman says, this is what Rabbi Shalom says, a very important point. He says, and now this answers the first question. Why does Hashem only plague Egypt? And why does he say he wants to kill Avimelech? Because the Egyptians were a bunch of lowlifes. So God would not expect anything more from a bunch of lowlifes. Bunch of licentious people, a pretty woman comes, so they're like, as the prophet describes the Egyptians, the prophet says about the Egyptians, Zirmas Susim Zirmasam. Their haste in immorality is like a horse running hastily, being as a stud horse, going from one horse to another. It's just like they're a bunch of horses. Just like, you take a stud horse, his whole job, his preoccupation is just to impregnate the other fillies. Right? So that's what the Egyptians were. Bunch of studs. Put a picture, powerful arms, dogs, ring the bell, just put a pretty woman in front of it, they don't even think. It's like you go to any public place, a very pretty half-clothed woman walks by, 10 men's necks just turn instinctively, without even thinking. There's just 10 people just turn their heads. That's just the way it is. That's what it was in Mitzrayim. So God didn't expect any more from those lowlifes, so he gives them a clock. So what do you do when a horse goes where it's supposed to go? What do you do when you're riding a horse and the horse wants to eat some turnips, wants to eat something from the tree? Give him a zaps and move on. So Paro's a lowlife. There's a bunch of lowlifes. So he wants to go and take advantage of Sarah. So what does Sarah? Hashem gives Sarah the ability. She says, hits him. She says, zap. Boom, he gets hit. Zap, gets hit again. Boom, gets hit again. Okay, that's you with a horse. And the horse gets hit enough. The horse says, okay, stop, I won't do anything. He calls out and says, get out of here, finish, goodbye. The horse learns his lesson. There's not a lot for the Torah to teach us over here, because Jews by nature hopefully aren't those kinds of horses. And there's not a lot of that kind of paro that we hopefully would not have to worry about. And that's why a lot of talk isn't done by this. But the fact that Avimelech comes across as a very sophisticated person, a person with derech eretz, he's a good man. We're moral people. We want to be good. And we only want to do what's good. Then that's already, Hashem is saying, well, if you're such a good guy, then why did you do what you did? If Paro does what he does, because he's a behemoth. Behemoth doesn't think. You purport to be a wonderful person. If you purport to be a wonderful person, then what are you doing taking this guy's wife? And for someone that you're into ethics and morality, so that then I can have a complaint against you and have a much greater criticism that you should be killed. So that's the difference. And they were people who felt that they had manners and they were civilized, and and the Torah has gone out of its way to say that's not the case. And this is the citation number 6, which is really the key to the whole class. Rav Shalom says like this. He says, we see that Avimelech was not included in the ways of the generation of the flood, the people of Sodom, Love, and etc. So why does the Torah tell us about his actions? Precisely because he was not a Rasha. And we would think that he was a civilized, straight, and good person, full of manners and derech eretz. If you read the Chumash, if you read the headlines in the Gror Times in those days, we could be misled to think that maybe there's some substance to the mannerisms of the non-Jews. You could think that, you could learn etiquette and manners from non-Jews. You might think so, because Avimelech, they were very cultured, very nice people. They were, the Ramban says it, and Rambam says they were. So maybe we could learn something from them. That is why the Torah relates the stories of Avimelech's actions to see and reflect that even though he was a person with derech eretz and manners, but it was still only in the way of the non-Jews. This is a very unpolitically correct class today. I wonder why anyone would be surprised I give such a class. Any derech eretz that is not built on the foundation of Torah and fear means Yiras Shamayim, is false. This is Rav Shalom speaking. And even the slightest wind will move them and uproot them upon their faces. What does he mean by that last line, Rav Shalom? Rav Shalom is referring to a statement in Pirkei Avos, which is the next source, which is a really beautiful idea. It says in Pirkei Avos, anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds. To what is that likened? His wisdom exceeds his good deeds. What would we call that? We call that today a liberal professor in university. Right? A lot of wisdom, but where are the good deeds? Right? What can be likened to? What can be likened to? To a tree whose branches are numerous, but its roots are few. Then the wind comes and it roots it and turns it upside down. Wind comes, and then it gets pulled out and it's upside down. So Rav Shalom asks a question, isn't it enough for the wind to blow it off? Why does it got to turn it upside down? Why does the rabbi in the Mishnah say it turns it upside down? Just say it uproots it. It turns it upside down. He says the answer is it turns it upside down so everyone will see how terrible the roots were. So you'll know why it didn't stay the way it was. And that's what the Tana is saying in the Mishnah. Anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds. He talks so nice. He has such good manners. You first. Right? All the etiquette to put the fork on the right side, the knife on the left side, and the pretty napkins, and of course we eat with a spoon, and all these other things, and we have to make sure our suits go to the cleaners and we look very clean, and I won't even interrupt you if you're talking. Very nice people. They have a lot of wisdom, but their manners don't exceed their wisdom. So we think they're pretty nice people. So Hashem says, no, I just need any wind to blow. And we'll describe this in great detail for the balance of this class. Any wind to blow will not only knock the guy off, but you'll see what kind of nothing roots he has. And that's what Reb Shalom meant when he said in the end of Source 6, any derech eretz that is not built on the foundation of Torah and fear is false, and even the slightest wind will move them and uproot them upon their faces. That's what he meant to say. Therefore, we go through the life of Avimelech to show you how the winds blew his tree off. And he looked so nice on the outside. But we turn the roots upside down, you see what kind of a bum the guy is. And the Torah is going out of its way to do that, to say don't be fooled by civilized people. Don't be fooled by people with good manners. If it's not based on Torah, it's worthless. Oh, going to get people upset who are listening in the TV audience too. Right? But that's what he's saying. Now let's go through the stories and see how this comes into being. We know there's a statement in Pirkei Avos, source number 10. He says, we know that Hakina v'hakavod v'hataiva motziin asa'adam min ha'olam. Jealousy, honor, and lust remove a person from this world. Those are what we'll call the three winds. When a wind of jealousy comes over a person, a wind of honor, your honor's been diminished, or a wind of lust, let's look at the civilized person and see how he acts with all his manners and all his culture. And that's, we have to turn it on its face and turn it upside down and see what ugly roots are there and how thoroughly ugly it is. That was really buried beneath the external veneer of nice fancy clothes and talking with etiquette and all these other things that are there. That's what it's teaching us over here. So now, you can begin to understand now, answer one of our questions, where he says to Avram, he says, why'd you lie? He said, I saw there was no fear of God. And then we quoted the Talmud that says, is this the derech eretz? That if a guest comes, you ask about the women and you don't ask about the lodgings? It seems to be conflicting answers. The answer, no, it's the same thing. Because there is no such thing as real derech eretz if there is no yira shamayim. If there's no fear of God, then there is no such thing as derech eretz. It doesn't exist. If it's not God-ordained understandings of what, if it's not godly manners, then there is no derech eretz. Secular manners, if secular manners, there's no derech eretz there. The only real derech eretz is if it's based on Torah. That's the only derech eretz that exists. And that's really what that's what Rabbi Shalom says in source number 9. Without Torah, it is impossible to change one's nature in any way. And all the manners that a person has are only superficial things. And he says, one second, and that's the danger with Avimelech. Because this person doesn't have Yira Shamayim, but he seems to be such a decent guy. He doesn't just grab Sarah. Now, what did Paro do? What did Paro do in the story? She has praised to him. Boom, he just takes her. No, he asks around. Who's this woman? This and that. And the Midrashim say he didn't just ask Avram. He asked everybody that he knew about this woman. Who is she? Is she a sister? Is she that right? And he treats Avram with all kinds of respect. So we're saying, so what do you want from such a guy? But we're saying, but it's still in the old. It's not derech eretz. It's not derech eretz. And what's really happening over here? I'll take your question in a minute. So Reb Shalom brings down the famous story. It's brought down with different heroes. Some say it's with Rav Yonas and Ivershitz, some say it's with the Rambam. It doesn't matter, it's the same story, probably happened with both. There was a big debate. A king was having a big debate, and amongst the people in the debate was a philosopher and Rav Yonas and Ivershitz. And the debate was the following. Is it possible to train animals to have manners? So the philosophers, who really believe, as we said on Shabbos, in the idea of cosmology, where believe that the whole world is just part of the cosmos, and a human being isn't anything more than a little bit more of a sophisticated monkey. So if a human being is a sophisticated monkey, then I could take an animal and make him be a sophisticated person. So the philosopher, so they said, yes, I believe that you could take animals and you can train them to be as good as humans. And Rabbi Yonas and Irish says, nothing doing. It's not possible. He says, okay. So they made a bet. And they said like this, I will get a cat, and I will train a cat to be the waiter at the next presidential ball. Give me a year, whatever, I will train the cat. And he turns to Rabbi Yonas and says, I got no problems. You can't. He says, no, I can't. Fine. So the philosopher spends a whole year training the cat. He puts a little tie on him and a little one of those waiter things with the little cummerbum, and he teaches him how to lay the table and all these things. His mom is working fine. Your son isn't worried at all. He's doing this. Comes the day, Vayova Hayom. This is going to be bringing out the cat, this My Fair Lady cat. Okay, so it's going to come out, and they're at the ball, and there's hundreds of guests there, and the cat holding the plate with the hors d'oeuvres. It's like unbelievable, and going around to everybody offering the hors d'oeuvres and picking up things. So, wow, it's amazing. Turns to Rabbi Yossi and says, "See, it's possible. Don't worry." Yossi brought in a little box with one mouse, and put the mouse to run right in front of the cat. The cat, and it picked up the table, ran over there, and the whole place was trashed in 2 minutes. What did it prove? You can maybe externally make the cat look like he's acting like a human, but just give him his base nature, the taiva, and he turns back to be the same cat he always was. That's exactly, Reb Shalom says, is exactly the story with a person whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds. A person without Torah, you can train a non-Jew to behave. You can train them to have manners. But when the wind will blow, and if it's the wind of immorality blowing, then all of a sudden, all the rules don't exist. Right? I don't remember which philosopher it was, if it was Socrates, I don't remember which philosopher it was, and he was philosophizing about morality and all these things, and he was himself the worst guy in the world. So they say, "Professor, how do you explain this?" He says, "Well, what I told you was as the professor I said this, but as the human being I live my life different." In other words, as the professor it's this way, but as a human being it's another way. So the Torah is going out of its way in this first story with Avimelech to say that with all the sophistication, all the manners, and he asked, and he this, and he that, but all of a sudden you put a beautiful woman in there, boom, all the rules don't apply. Oh, but of course, he has to do it in a sophisticated way. Stump, he's not Paro. I'm not one of those lowlifes. I'm not one of those gothic hordes, you know. I have a nice suit and everything, and we ask, and we this and we that, and we find out, and this and that, and if she really is the wife, and if we find out he is the husband, we'll have to find some legal means that are acceptable in the United Nations to find a way to get Avram killed. Of course, we'll come up with reasons why it's a threat to humanity, and we'll all do it dignified and proper, and we'll be properly married to this woman. You see. So that's why the Torah is giving us so much play. Avimelech, he was a very, probably the world looked at him, he was much different than the world of Stone, the world of Mitzrayim. You know, those were really low-class people, but we're sophisticated people. So the Torah is taking the root and turning it upside down and see, look how disgusting this guy is. A guy comes to you, you go ask about the women, is that what you're supposed to ask? Well, if you have that kind of non-Jewish way of looking at the world, well, that's what you really are. You can cover it up, but when push comes to shove, that's who you really are. Now, we're not saying that this doesn't happen to Jews too. Jews who don't study Torah can act just like non-Jews as well. You know, it's not the non-Jews we're debating here. It's their philosophy we're debating. It's the philosophy that says if I take care of the externals, then everything will be fine. It doesn't. When the wind will blow, we'll see the real person and how they come out. So that's how it was in regarding what? Taiva. Taiva, lust. So now let's go. We've got 2 more to go. We got lust, and we got to do kavod, and we got to do jealousy. In all 3 areas, Avimelech falls on his face in all 3 areas. Let's talk about kavod now. So Hashem comes to him in the dream. And he says, you're going to die. Now you understand now why he's going to die. Because you're a smart guy already. You think you're sophisticated. So why are you doing the same thing that Paro does? Right? And then he says, well, is this the way you do things, God? You're going to punish people for no good reason? That's probably how you killed out the rest of the world too. So we said, isn't this an unbelievable chutzpah? How can he talk to Hashem this way? The answer is, now we got to look at the second area of his life. We said 3 things take you away. Well, we already saw how lust turned him into a cat. Now we got to see that every human being, if we're not careful, has a tremendous ego and wants a lot of kavod, a lot of honor, and that's very unhealthy if it's to an excess. Good self-esteem is one thing, But wanting honor is another. And what do I mean by honor? In other words, I want everybody to think that I'm a great guy. Doesn't everybody really? Don't you have a little challenge? You want everyone to think you're a great person? And when does push come to shove? When perhaps you've done something that maybe you will not be portrayed in such a good light to those people. So Avimelech not only was a Baal Taiva, not only was he someone who ran after Taiva, we'll call him a Baal Kavod, a person who ran after honor. So what can a person who runs after, just like a person who's a Baal Taiva, he can't stop himself from a pretty woman. Okay, what can the Baal Kavod not stop himself from? He cannot hear that he's done anything wrong. Right? If you hold that you're an honorable man, well, what's the one thing you cannot hear? That you're not honorable. That's terrible. I'm Avimelech the straight. I'm Avimelech a good man. I'm not like these low-class people. I'm a good man. And that dictates his life and navigates his life. So, of course, as soon as he'll hear any criticism, then his honor has been touched. God comes and says, you're going to die. Why? Because you took a married woman. What? What? You're going to criticize me for that? Now, he's already fallen. This is post-falling and being a Baal Taiva, you understand. I mean, really, he had sophisticated, sister, what do you ask about a lady for? You don't have a wife already? What are you looking after a woman, another woman, this woman fully clothed? You know, she's a pretty woman. First thing you think about, you can't control like the cat. So Hashem pointed out, you're just like the cat, mister. What? How dare you call me a cat? You understand? You're touching on his kavod. So now you get responses. So what response? And you know what, God? Then you got chutzpah. It's bad enough the rabbi can't tell you you're wrong. God can't even tell you you're wrong. God said, God came to you in a dream, you idiot. You know, you're gonna quit. And says, God, you know, I don't think you're fair the way you do anything. At what lengths one will go, how stupid you look to defend your kavod. You're saying the Almighty doesn't know what He's doing. You want to criticize Avram, Mela. You're going to say, God, you know, as a matter of fact, I think when you destroyed the nation of the flood, and you destroyed the generation of the flood, they were nice people. And the biggest proof is, I'm a nice guy and you're punishing me. Because he can't take hearing it. So now how do you have to do with a guy who can't take hearing it? So now we come to the next questions we ask. Why did God have to repeat the warning? You're going to die. And why did God have to add and say, and everyone's going to die? So the answer is, the guy who's a Baal Kavod, if you don't warn him again, what? Now, figure now. He went and took the wife. Now, what are the options Avimelech has? What are the options he has? Let's think about this now. God has closed his body parts. All right? Now, he tried Taiva. He lost his Taiva. God just isn't allowing him to. I mean, if he was allowed to, believe me, he would have done it. Right? But he's not allowed to. So what has he got left? He's got covered. Now, what are the options here? Well, he could. Now remember, he took her into the palace. So what is God wanting to do? Give her back. Now if he just gives her back, what's going to happen to his cover? What happens to his honor? You made a big mistake. He's going to talk about that in the papers. He took her, and she was a real married woman, and he said he was such a nice guy. He's such an honorable man. Why is he giving him back? So what would the man who runs after honor, what would he prefer to do? If you were Avimelech, before God's lacing into you, what would be Avimelech's strategy? Keep Sarah in the palace. Even though his body is plotzing from inside, because he can't relieve himself, but he can't lose that honor. And even if God says, I'll kill you, you know what? You better remind this guy. I'm really going to kill you. Okay? Because don't think you can just hang around with Sarah over here. Right? And more than that. And what would happen? Let's take it a step further. What would Avimelech rather do? He'd rather die honorably with his legacy than return Sarah. So God says, you know what? Not only you're going to die, but your whole family's going to die. There's going to be no legacy. And more than that, when the way I'm going to kill you all, they'll all know that God killed you because you took a married woman. So after you die, they're going to make fun of you after you die. Now he didn't have any way out of it. So even the Baal Kavod, he says, but I won't even get any kavod at the end. I'll even die for the kavod. But if I don't even get kavod at the end, well, then I've got to give her back. But if he's going to give her back, he has to try to give her back in a way that he still doesn't lose his kavod. Okay, how's he going to do that? How's he going to give her back and not... You following me? You following the story here? This is like beautiful. It's like a whole soap opera here. He's going to give her back, so now this answers the next questions. So he doesn't go get upright. Now let's contrast this to Paro. Back to Paro. Paro is the horse, right? The horse ain't into his kavod, right? It's not into his kavod. He's getting punished. First thing, he goes to Avram. Take it back. I'm wrong. Just stop the pain. I'm a horse, right? Doesn't care. Avimelech, he can come running back to Avram and saying there's something wrong. The man with good manners and class and sophistication, you don't get excited. We're going to do this in a very, menschlich way. I don't have to rush into life. I'm going to go back to sleep and get all frazzled. And then I'm going to call in all my advisors. And I'm going to speak in their ears, meaning very privately. I don't want word getting out. And he says, gentlemen, we have a very serious issue here. The honor of the kingdom is at stake. We've got to find a way to clean up the mess and look good. So that's what all his advisors are called in for very quietly. He says, we have to come up with a plan that the honor of the kingdom isn't lowered in its esteem. So we're going to have to come up with a plan, and the plan is going to besmirch Avram. And now when he comes in, he calls Avram in. During business hours. This is part of the running government. You have created a tremendous breach of the morality in this country for not telling me that she is your wife. I'm an honest guy, and they put the whole blame on Avram. That was the whole strategy over there. Such an honorable man like that, he got all the advisors, but quietly, we can't really, because we really know what's going on. The fact is, all our body parts have been plugged up. Everyone in the kingdom. But let not the star find out about this. Right? We don't have to let everybody know that we've been plagued. Let's keep it quiet. And we'll just blame Avram for bringing such iniquity to our place. And then, of course, he shows what kind of a wonderful guy he is. Avram, you're so terrible. How could you do this? Well, there wasn't, you guys aren't God-fearing. I'm saying God-fearing. He says, what do you mean? Not God-fearing. Here. Wherever you want to stay, you could stay. No hard feelings. Here's money. Here's this. Here's that. Stay here. It's amazing. And now he's the wonderful diplomat. The wonderful man, Avimelech. You've got to be careful for those people. For kavod, what a person will do, to what lengths will go to kavod. We've got to think, do we ever behave this way ever? Is it ever that with all my, that we don't look at things we shouldn't look because there's taiva wakes us up? Or if we're wrong, to just get up and say, I was wrong. That's it. And say, I was wrong. Instead, we come up with so many excuses. No, well, I meant this. It's everybody else's fault, right? If you have the only real manners can come from the Torah. The Torah says you don't run after kavod. If you don't run after kavod, you make a mistake. You admit your mistake. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And you find true Jewish heroes were able to suffer those mistakes, and at the end of the day, they remained great people. Avimelech is the same bum he always was, but he's a sophisticated bum. No one will ever think he's a bum. Torah has to take the root, blow it off, and show you the roots. He's the worst guy. That's why I talk so much about this guy, because you think he's good. He's not. So we did taiva, we did kavod. So one left. Kina, jealousy. Okay. So now we go to 2 weeks from now. Yitzchak comes to the country. Now already Avimelech, he's learned from the past. He's a good man. I ain't going to take this woman. No, I'm going to watch very carefully what's going on. I ain't going to make that mistake again. And he finds out, he doesn't even take her. He finds out that they really are married. So he tells everybody, don't touch her, don't do anything, we got to be nice to him, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, well, I can't, as much as I want to be immoral, I already know I can't. Right? COVID, I was able to kind of cover it up, so to speak. But now, so in other words, what happens is, a person says, I've got a lot of manners, I don't need Torah, I can be okay. You see, okay, I made a mistake with immorality, I'll fix that. I covered up my tracks. So now God says, but I got lots of tools, lots of different winds to blow at you. And each one will just expose another vulnerability that you have. So now we're going to move on to jealousy. So now all of a sudden this Yitzhak, this stranger comes in. It's a very tough land now. It's a hunger. He's a stranger. What does he know about agriculture? What does he know about the land of Gror? He plants. He gets 100 times more than everybody else. He becomes wealthy overnight. So we asked a whole bunch of questions over here. Right? All these questions. But the bottom line to answer all the questions is, what does it say after he had it? It says, Vayekanu oso. They were jealous of him. But it really should have said, Vayekanu bo, of him. So Rav Shalom says a very nice line that we learned in this week's parsha when Avimelech came to Avram to make a peace treaty. Avram made a peace treaty, and Avram criticized him first for certain not proper actions. Yitzchak won't. Why? Because Yitzchak knows if the guy's a total fanatic, I can't give him any criticism. And you know what? If he wants to make a peace treaty, let's just make it. Because we're dealing with a Meshugim there. Can't criticize. Can't criticize. If you're dealing with someone who says, I'm an honorable guy, then Avram should have said, well, I don't have to make a peace treaty with you if you're such an honorable guy. You're an honorable guy. I don't have to make a peace treaty with you. You're an honorable guy. How come your shepherds were doing this and this? You're an honorable guy. That's what you claim. Oh, and when Avram said, he says, oh. Seriously, his response to Avram in this week's parsha, he said, after he rebukes him about the wells, they were taking wells, he said like this, I don't know who did it. Then he says, and you didn't tell me. And I didn't hear about it till today. Those are three contradictory clauses. It's like any politician. He says, I don't know who did it. What does it matter? I don't know who did it. What does that imply? You know something was done, but I don't know who did it. His first reaction is, and you didn't tell me. Like it's your fault. You didn't tell me. But somebody else told me. But then he says, and I didn't hear about it till today. So that's how he's trying to, covet it, trying to get out of it. It's like, the politician says, it was an error in judgment. Not that I made a mistake, right? It was like, we didn't know about it. Oh, well, nobody told about it. Oh, I just found about it today. Like, he's trying to cover himself. But yes, the jealousy is motivating him like crazy. There's nothing I can do. He's a fanatic. He's crazy. I can't talk to him. So you see this. So to Avram, he can behave one way, because that's one agenda he's trying to cover up. The other one, so you see in all three ways, the major three ways that define our human personality is morality, honor, and jealousy. He falls to each and every one of them. He can't control himself. Can't control himself at all. And that's the difference between an Avimelech and an Avram. Now, Rav Shalom ends with a beautiful idea. You understand? You understand now? Everything, I think all the questions have been answered. So he concludes, there is no manners, there's no ethics without Torah. And he closes with an amazing story. It's going to be a short class today, only an hour. The Alter from Slobodka had a number of students around him one day. Rav Avram Kalmanovich, Rav Yitzchak, Rav Aaron Kotler, future Gedolim, great leaders that would become leaders later on in the next generation. And they were discussing a topic, and discussing, is there what a Jew can learn from the non-Jews? Is there what to learn from the non-Jews? It was a discussion. And there was one bacher there who lived in Berlin at the time, and he said, certainly there's what to learn from the non-Jews. If there's something good to learn from them, there's something to learn. And he says, for example, the good manners that I see in Berlin. People come on time. People are dressed nice. All these things. And everybody was laughing. Everybody sat there and was quiet. They didn't respond. Didn't answer. And then the Alter from Slobodka changed the topic. He talked about the attributes of being a Jew, and he said that because we have so many wonderful attributes that we can learn from Jews, there's nothing to learn from the non-Jews in this area. Now there's a Gemara, parenthetically, that says if there's wisdom in the non-Jews, you can believe it. In other words, if a non-Jew tells you about the theory of relativity, or if a non-Jew tells you I've created electricity, you can believe them. In the areas of science where we make discoveries of actual things of true knowledge, if they say, if you have a headache, take an aspirin, we could believe them. But when we talk about morals and values, he's saying, no. So the tzaddik didn't knock the Germans. He says, the Jews have so many wonderful role models, we don't have to look anywhere else. It was a very diplomatic way of saying it. Anyway, when the discussion was over and the group broke up, so the Bacher turned to Rav Aaron Kotler, who's not yet the great Aaron Kotler yet, and he turns to him and he says, I still haven't changed my mind, that even though Jews have wonderful things, no question about it, Jews are amazing, but in Berlin there's what to learn from their manners. End of the first part of the story. So, many years pass, Rav Aaron Kotler moves to America, he builds the Lakewood Yeshiva, and that's all history of how amazing it is. And many, many years passed from that meeting that they had when they were speaking to the Alter of Navardik. And Rav Aaron, and Aaron was in the yeshiva, and then a Jew that he didn't recognize at first came over to him as Rav Aaron was about to give his shir in the yeshiva. So a Jew comes over and says, I got to talk to you now. I got to talk to you for a couple of minutes. So Rav Aaron takes him into his room. And he says, my name is so-and-so. I used to learn in Slobodka. And he reminds him of the whole story that we just described. And we were discussing, is there anything to learn from the non-Jews? And the Rebbe said, there's nothing to learn from them. And he talked about the virtues of the Jews. And I walked out, and I remember I told you that even though the Jews are wonderful, there's what to learn from the Germans. So he says, now I saw what their manners were all about. And he pulled his sleeve out, and there was no hand over there. And then he goes and discusses what they did. That in the camps, he said that one of the Germans, they took his hand and just sliced his hand right off. And when they sliced it off, all the soldiers were laughing and joking how amazing, and they were very entertained by all that. He says, that was the manners that I learned from the Germans. So that's the story that Rav Aaron told Rav Shalom. So that's the story. And then Rav Aaron told him another story. He said, from Rav Moshe Mordechai Epstein, he says that many years before the Holocaust, Rav Moshe Mordechai Epstein was in Berlin. And he saw in one of the vineyards there was a German there who was mamish hugging and kissing his doggy. And Rav Moshe Mordechai said to one of his students, he quoted a verse that says, Zovchei Adam Agolim Yashkum. The offerings of the person, he will kiss his animals. Meaning to say, if you see people hugging and kissing their animals, don't think because they have such mercy on living beings. He said, quote, but from these people who appear to be so merciful on the animals, they will be the ones who are Zovchei Adam, will kill human beings. Not only did he say this, Rav Kook also said it in his farm. He said the same thing. Misplaced mercy means it's misplaced and will eventually happen. Unfortunately, we don't have to go over all of Jewish history to understand this. It was Bedavka. This was the Greeks, was the Romans, was the Germans, were the Spaniards. Every generation that gave the greatest brutality to the Jews were the most well-mannered people in the world. And the Germans were very well-mannered to anyone but a Jew. What was going on? So what's wrong with the Spaniards? What's wrong with the Romans? What's wrong with the Germans? What's wrong with them is they have manners that's not predicated on Torah. So of all the lessons to learn from the Holocaust, which there are many, but one thing clearly no one can argue this point. What God was showing the world, that the greatest cultured society in the world, that had opera, and had philosophy and universities and cleanliness and all these things. When the wind blew, the roots were turned upside down. And and you can't say we're just following orders. It doesn't wash. It's not acceptable. You don't follow an order to chop a Jew's hand off. You don't follow those kinds of orders. Unless there's kavod, gaiva, taiva, then kina, jealousy. So here's the point, and here's the lesson, as brutal as it may be. And this is what a Jew has to really understand. And this is the main point. We live in a non-Jewish world. And this parsha is saying, and this is part of, this is the patriarchs are teaching this. It's part of Avram, Lech Lecha. We're developing into being Jews. Avram is becoming a Jew. And the most important lesson to learn in becoming a Jew is that there is nothing to learn in morality from the non-Jewish world. Why? Because whatever they have is not based in Torah. It's based on a human, weak idea of what morality is. It's what a human being thinks is good, which cannot be good. It cannot. And it's happened to, it's not like, what do you mean, what about it? Every dominant country in the world that was not, and it's more, not just a bunch of Muslim crazies, fundamentalists, that they look so like, nobody even thinks that they're normal. Okay, don't be like a Muslim. That I don't need a drush on that. But why can't you be like a German? Why can't you be like the English? They have tea at 4 o'clock and they have a special gloves. Why can't we do that? Well, it's a very nice, prim and proper English people watched 83 people in 1929 in Hebron get massacred, and they didn't do a darn thing because they're so prim and proper and fully cultured. So, why, I want to ask a question. Why are Jews so stupid? Why are Jews so stupid? There hasn't been one country that hasn't failed to disappoint. There hasn't been one king, even though it was nice for a while, it was only because it was in his benefit. Right? Why do we run after to buy into this culture? How many more times? Now God has mercy on us, says, go learn some Chumash. And go to a Parsha class, and you learned how Avram had to deal with Avimelech, and you see, the roots get turned over, you see, he's a Gornish of a Gornish. But he's cultured. He runs after the first pretty woman. He can't admit he makes any mistakes. He's willing, I didn't even get into detail how he hurt his own country by throwing out Yitzchak, by the way, I didn't mention. The country had bad economy. Yitzchak comes in, he's wealthy, the economy is good for everybody else, but he's just wealthier. They throw him out, the economy goes down. They knew the economies go down if they threw him out, but we're so jealous of it. You understand? So what's there to want to emulate? And Avimelech was the best of the non-Jews in that era. The best. So now, why do you think the rabbis are crazy when they tell you, don't copy what they're doing? What do you mean? They're so nice. They open the door for us. They're so nice. They give education for the handicapped and this and that and everything else. Just wait. I'm not talking about, oh, Rabbi, you're just so afraid. You're so neurotic. It's a typical Jewish neurosis over history because you had it in the past. And can't you think straight and be normal and it's a liberal society? The answer is learn history. And you show me one exception to the rule. One exception to the rule. You show me one country where Jews lived for hundreds of years. It was perfect. Everything was fine. And when the wind blew, everything was fine. I mean, we were so stupid to not remember 60 years ago. Not one country wanted to lift a finger to save a Jew. Not one. All the nicest countries in the world. Not one. That'll never happen again. Are you so foolish to think it's not going to happen again? Now, the point isn't to scare anybody. The point is one point. Stop praising the way they live. Stop wanting to be like them. What do you mean? They go to hockey games and they do this and they do that, and it's all these things, you know. You go to a sports event and people legally, because you get paid, can kill people. Can you imagine if I go in the street now, take one of you guys, and I tackle you? and I tap you out zets, and I give you a body check, and go flying 50 feet in the direction. But if you get paid $70,000 a game, you could do that. And even if after the guy's down, you bludgeon him, so they fine you for 3 games. If you would do this in the street, they put you in jail for a year. And these are the people we want to emulate. We train our little children to play hockey. I'm not against hockey. But they have to have this the jersey of this number to be like this guy. It's a bunch of para-autumns. But they're sophisticated. They've got handlers who say you gotta. So what does it? Does it mean all non-Jews are bad? I'm not saying all non-Jews are bad. They just don't have a code of morality that's based on any truth. And it's based on how can we just get what's best for us. And if best for us means get rid of the Jews, it's never been a problem for anybody. Never was, never will be. But more than that, why do you want your kids to be like them? That is the worst part. Forget about, let's say there'll be no Holocaust. Forget about Holocausts, which we can't. But let's say we could. You want your kid to grow up to be like Avimelech? Do you want your kid to be the kind of person who will never say I'm wrong? Because we are very sophisticated. We live in a modern society. There is no ultimate truth. You know what that means, an ultimate truth? It means I'm never wrong. That's what you're really saying. You're not saying you're liberal and everyone's entitled to say what they want. What you're really saying is, I'll never be told that I'm wrong. Now you imagine you have a society that goes that way for a few hundred years, what's going to happen? How they're going to get along or not get along with each other? This is what our children are being taught. This is the society. So we don't have to speak negatively. We just have to realize it's not a virtue. And that's what the tzaddik was saying over here. That's what the Alter from Slobodka was saying. He says, we don't have to look. You want to know how to behave? Well, go to last year's Parsha class this week, last year, what chesed is. And we spent an hour and a half describing what kindness is. Go learn from our. Spend time looking at tzaddikim and see this is the way we're supposed to behave. The non-Jewish world, let them do what they want. But I have nothing to learn from them. Maybe if I need to be an accountant, I'll learn the rules of life. If I have to be a doctor, I'll learn how to be a surgeon. That you could learn from them. But don't you dare try to learn any ethics or morals from them. Because when the wind will blow, you'll see. When the wind blows, right, it's the Jew who gives his last piece of bread away in the Holocaust to somebody else, and it's the Nazi who's cutting your hand off and is laughing about it. Now, sometimes the wind won't blow for a while, but you know what? The wind blows often now. It blows off. Just wait if 2 people get in a minor accident, you'll see how the winds will blow. How you're supposed to react to get an fender bender during rush hour traffic. You could see what people do when the wind blows. These are nice moral people. Probably a professor driving to give a course at university, and you go cut him off and see what kind of road rage he'll have to you. That's when the winds blow. So Baruch Hashem, we have an Avram, we have a Yitzchak, we have a Yaakov, that we should be so thankful Hashem gave us a way to learn, and we have from whom not to learn, and to be thankful that we have from whom to learn. Okay.